Hannah today said, the thing I struggle with is that I have neutral cool olive skin with some depth, some softness and some brightness and lightness, which makes it really confusing, as I feel like I could pull off almost any colour season. I find that bright colours make me look healthy but kind of overwhelm me, but other colours can look a bit dull on me. I seem to suit cool and bright colours, yet my hair goes warm in the sun and I tan easily, but extremely warm colours clash with my colouring. True summer looks good on me, but still it can look a bit plain, like I'm missing something. There's also so many sub-seasons in different colour systems that it gets confusing. And absolutely this is true, but it's also why I developed my absolute colour system, which has 18 palettes, because there is the seasons where I found were too limiting. I was doing colour analysis and I was finding that people didn't really fit in. And so what I wanted was to have options for everybody. So I'm going to just start at the top of your question. I can pull off any colour season. The reality is you can't. You will find some colours will just wash you out. And if you know, bright colours may be overwhelming, as you mentioned. So you said, like, bright colours overwhelm you. So it means you don't want the really bright colours. But when we think about colour, colour has three properties. We have the saturation or the intensity, that is the brightness. And think about it as a complete spectrum, all the way from really, really bright fluoro colours all the way down to basically grey. But if you've ever tried to mix greys together and you find they just don't go together, it's because some greys are warm and some greys are cooler, and greys actually have different undertones. So, but really many greys are actually a colour. It's just that they're so muted and so greyed out that we don't notice the colour in them. So there is a huge spectrum between the bright and the muted. You don't have to be at either end. You can be somewhere in the middle, for example. So here is a brighter swatch that is brighter, the refined swatch. Here is serene. So when we compare serene to refined, you can see that serene looks much more muted than the refined does. But there is actually something in between, and I can't hold everything at the same time. But here is sublime. So sublime is a little bit brighter than serene, but not as bright as refined is. And so this is where there is a spectrum, and this is why I developed my system. It's because what I wanted was to show you that there are different variations between the really bright and the really muted. So you will be somewhere on that spectrum. I would suggest you're in between. You're not the really bright end, but you're also not the really muted end, because they wash you out. So we might think, I want a little bit more brightness, but it's not the true bright colours that really suit you. Now, analysis is more than just skin too. We need to take into hair and eyes into consideration as well, and particularly hair, because hair is what gives us our value. It's actually less about the skin that gives us value. It's more about the hair. So, you know, this is where it's actually the hair that gives us the value. So if you have light hair, you'll suit a lighter palette. If you have dark hair, you will suit a darker palette. And of course, even within those spectrums, there is difference from like medium light compared to really, really light, or medium dark compared to really, really dark. And so this is where I have that complete spectrum of that value spectrum taken into consideration as well, between the light to dark. So we think with colour analysis, we've got three spectrums we're looking at. We've got the intensity or saturation from really bright down to really muted. We have the value spectrum, which is really light to really, really dark. And then we have the undertone. And this is from really cool to really, really warm. And there are colours close to the middle in between. And so this is also too where a lot of the original seasonal systems were very, very extreme on their warm and cool. And there are an awful lot of colours that are closer to the middle between warm and cool. And you may suit one of those palettes that's actually slightly closer to the middle between warm and cool, rather than those extreme ones. You may still be cool, but you're not necessarily the super cool end of cool. And this is why you want to use a more modern system. Many of the seasonal systems I actually find are quite lacking. It's great that people are getting back into seasonal colour analysis, because it means that people are learning more about colour analysis, but there are other ways of looking at colours more than just those original seasonal systems. Now, when you say in summer too, your hair goes warm, and absolutely that happens. And this is because all underlying hair pigments are warm, pretty much, unless you have true black hair or very, very white hair. And this is because the underlying hair pigments in blonde hair is yellow, in a dark blonde is a yellow orange, in a light brown is a orange, and then we've got in a dark brown, we've got, you know, like darker mid brown, some orange red, and then a dark brown is red. So those underlying pigments are warm, and the sun, just like chemicals, bleaches your hair. So over time, the sun is actually exposing those warmer pigments in your hair, and that's how it happens to everyone. And if you dye your hair, the way dye works is it exposes those pigments, it bleaches out the natural color that you have, and then it lays down more pigment. And so this is why it's actually much harder to dye hair cool than warm. You have to add blue and other cooler colors to dyes to actually compensate for those warmer orange and yellow pigments that naturally come there. And this is why you may find, if you're more brunette, using a blue shampoo or a brunette shampoo and conditioner, and if you're on the more blonde side, so a dark blonde to lighter blonde, using a purple or violet shampoo. So you'll often see these shampoos with a lot of purple in them, and what that does is it neutralizes those warm pigments that are exposed by the sun or by chemical dyes, and even things like the chlorine in the water. All these things are bleaching your hair, and they're actually allowing your hair to warm up. So particularly if you're cool, so I use a purple shampoo a lot, and it keeps the yellowness out of my hair that otherwise the water would put in. And also heat styling tools can also make your hair go more yellow, bleach it out more. So I would suggest that, you know, and it's the reason why your hair is like that is just because that is normal hair. Everybody's hair has a warm undertone. If you're bleaching away, if we're taking off those pigments that are the outside pigments, and the sun will do this over time. So you don't even have to use chemical processes. The sun will do this. You know, the water that you wash your hair in can do this. Swimming can do this. All sorts of things can do this. It'll bleach your hair. It'll expose those pigments. And, you know, tanning is not about whether or not you're warm or cool. There are warm tans and cool tans. There are many warm people who say have red hair and that very fair skin. They don't tan either, versus there are cool people who also tan. So tanning is not a sign of undertone. There are so many myths and misconceptions about understanding undertone, and this is why it's good to go to someone who's been really well trained in color analysis, not a 1 or 2 day course. You want someone who's done a lot of training, and then some good experience also. But there's a lot of myths and misconceptions out there, and like looking at wrists doesn't tell you. I was, you know, talking to a dermatologist, and they said, you know, the color of the veins on your wrist can depend on the thickness of your skin. This has zero to do with undertone, and that's why this, you know, vein thing is not a great guide to finding your colouring. It's really what is happening to you when we are putting different colours on you, which colours are making you look healthier and which colours are making you look washed out. That's what we're really looking for, and we're looking for that harmony and balance between you and the colours. So if the colours are too bright, yeah, they will overwhelm you. They'll create a body focus. You know, they may not be terrible if they're in the right undertone, but they're not overwhelming you, versus the more muted colours may be underwhelming you, and they may be draining you. So you may need something in between. And of course too, how you put the colours together. If you're feeling bland in your outfit, it could be because you're missing either the right value contrast or the right colour contrast in your outfits. That's a whole nother topic, and I've got lots and lots of blog posts about that and free downloads of how to understand that. Plus I cover it in depth in my colour masterclass, and it's something that I go into in person in my 7 Steps to Style program to let you know what yours are. But this is where it's those things on top of just the palette that make you really shine when you are wearing the right colors, in the right contrast, in the correct value. All those things make the biggest difference.